Today's video should be pretty straightforward, and I'm hoping that we can nourish many roots with the same pail of water here, because I do have many goals within the channel, and specifically today I hope to cover help for those who are doubting and deconstructing, people who feel stuck. They can't make that final push past into what they now believe is truth. Also, I have a deep interest in psychology and like sharing that. We'll get to do that here. And I want to advocate for better thinking, critical thinking, understanding fallacies, and we will get to do that here. The topic that allows us to cover all of this is that of the sunk cost fallacy. And there's just 3 points that I want to cover. 1, I want to talk about what the fallacy is. 2, I want to talk about how it relates to Christianity or religion in general. And 3, I want to talk about why one should still push past it. Most of the times, the sunk cost fallacy is thought of in terms of gambling. Someone that has already invested a large amount of money into whatever game they are playing, let's use blackjack for the example, and they should just cut their losses and walk away. But it's because of those losses that they don't walk away. And there's a whole host of things happening psychologically here that I want to get into. It's funny, we're covering another gambling example, if you will. The last video was on Pascal's Wager. Check it out if you missed it. We should just do an entire playlist of God's Casino. We could talk about the house edge of predestination, how prayer is essentially you betting against the house, the prosperity gospel of the slot machine, the whole thing being a house of cards, religion itself being a big game of Russian roulette, hell as the infinite bad beat. I mean, it just is too easy, but I probably won't do that. Let's move on to today's video. What exactly is the sunk cost fallacy? Basically, like in the blackjack example, it occurs when someone continues to invest something, whether it is money, time, resources, energy, or effort, not because it's beneficial, but because they have already invested so much that they feel they simply cannot walk away. We as humans are loss averse. Generally speaking, we feel the pain of losing something much more than the joy of gaining something. Our brains struggle to accept sunken cost as unrecoverable. It's too much to bear. And instead we keep throwing in more effort or whatever the initial thing was. And then we do something strange. Whatever that investment was, we tie directly to emotion. It has now become an emotional investment. And there's a great article I'll link. It's from the Journal of Economic Behavior and Organization that found that individuals with a higher emotional investment were far less likely to change course, even when presented with better alternatives. Staying in the same dead-end job is a perfect example of this. In fact, there's another study from the Harvard Business Review that focuses just on that. People that have been in the same careers for decades because of the simple fear of wasted time or wasted effort. And this was when those study participants were shown actual evidence that switching their careers would lead to a better outcome. You would think that the choice would be obvious, but again, we are more motivated by avoiding that loss than we are gaining that pleasure. That's why it's a much more useful tool to dangle the prospect of hell in front of someone than it is to dangle the prospect of heaven. We seek to maintain our status quo. We do not want it to get worse. We would like if it got better, but where we put our energy is in it not going south. And again, this applies to so much more than just your behavior at the casino or staying in a long-term dead-end job. Relationships is one of the biggest ones. Think about how many people you know that stuck with that boyfriend or that girlfriend, even though they knew it probably wasn't going to lead anywhere, because it was easier. It was easier just to stay. They'd already invested so much time. They already knew each other. They already got through the hard parts. It was comfortable. So what if they're not that compatible? So what if the other person wasn't exactly who they thought they were? If they leave now, all of that time and energy was for nothing. People do this with their education. They continue on in college careers that they hate because they've already finished their first 2 years in it, or they already got their bachelor's in it, so might as well do the master's, and so on and so forth. The willingness and ability to pivot in life in general is such an important skill, and it is a skill because you have to override our natural loss aversion. And it's a hard line to draw. You know, another example that's often talked about with sunk cost fallacy is someone who has started a business and it is not performing. They are going broke. They are going further in debt. Do you take that as evidence that this thing is not working and pivot, try something else, get out, stop, kill the business. You've already put so much time in, so you have that sunk cost fallacy working against you. And then you also have those one-off stories about the person that had to go sleep in their car right before they made it, or the person that was about to quit and it was their very next deal the next day that actually led them to success. Those stories work well for us because they reaffirm what we already wanted to hear, that our investment is going to be worth it. But on average, that is simply not true. And I'm not saying to not chase your dreams or to quit as soon as something gets hard. That's what I mean. It's hard. It is a delicate balance. But we can see where we err most. And we definitely err on sticking around too long in all of these. It doesn't even have to be something big. You've probably done this with a book or a movie that you absolutely hate or find boring. You already read the first 300 pages. You already watched the first hour and a half. Might as well finish it. Why? You don't like it. DNF that thing and move on. Then there's really extreme cases. A good one is the Vietnam War. US officials kept escalating that war despite the fact that there was no victory in sight, because we had already spent billions and we had already lost so many lives. And so what did it lead to? More billions lost and more lives lost. And of course, there's tons of other major examples that we could point to. But this is something that as an individual and in groups, it is extremely hard to break away from. So I'm sure you can assume, but let's break it down. How does this relate to Christianity or to religion in general? I've spent my whole life believing this. How can I change now? And by the way, let me interrupt really quick. The reason I want to cover this is not to convince someone to leave Christianity. I've said this many times, but I feel honestly I cannot say it enough. My goal, what I'm assuming here, is that if someone is doubting or deconstructing or in the process of deconversion and they are seeking out help and information, they might end up here. Of course, there are some Christians here who are very secure in their faith and they just want to argue, or they might even have good intentions of trying to save the lost. But these videos that I'm labeling under deconversion help, this is because I know where you get stuck. At the end of this video, the video that pops up on the screen to watch next will be the in-between, because I want to also offer help after identifying this problem, what to do next. But again, I know where you get stuck. Whether it's the fear of hell of what if I'm wrong? How will it affect my family? My paycheck is wrapped up in this. My identity is wrapped up in this. But if you kind of categorize all of this together, a lot of it just comes down to the sunk cost fallacy. Not all of it, and we're painting with a broad brush. But I'm hoping if I can explain this to you and you can give it a name, you can identify it, you can see how it's acting itself out in your life. If you are someone who has lost their faith, or you're hanging on because of anything other than this is true, I'm just here to offer assistance. So many examples. Again, I've believed in this my whole life. I've already invested so much time, all those Sundays at church, all the time on my knees in prayer, all the Bible studies, all the evangelizing. What, it's all for nothing? I've raised my kids this way. What does it mean if I leave? I was raised this way. What will it do to my parents if I leave? If I admit that I was wrong, I might lose my reputation. I might lose my community. I might lose my family. Again, what if you've dedicated your career to ministry? Can you really just walk away now? This is what you have your degree in. This is the only experience you have on the resume. I just had that conversation with Durante, an ex-pastor, and this was something that I brought up, that I can't imagine how much more hard it is for a pastor, talk about a sunk cost fallacy, to be able to leave. But in general, it remains true for anyone that leaves the faith. But there's a few specifics that I wanted to touch on about how this works within Christianity. The first is that there's also doctrinal reinforcement for the idea, not just our natural loss aversion, but it's playing off of that loss aversion. The Bible tells you over and over, you've already sacrificed, don't give up now. Matthew 10:22 talks about, it is he who endures that will be saved. This doctrinal reinforcement is that suffering is a virtue. And I gave the example earlier of the person that just keeps going on their business that's clearly dead and failing and harming them. And they're getting that suffering is a virtue from this toxic masculinity stuff they see online. Christians get it from the word. It glorifies perseverance, especially the worse off your suffering is. using Jesus as the ultimate example. James 1:12 says, "Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial." Jesus assures you that to follow him means to be persecuted, to become an enemy of the world. And if someone doubts, they're told that that's good, but to push through. These things make it feel like leaving is a spiritual failure of some sort, instead of the honest recognition that what you were taught was simply wrong. And the most honest thing to do with the most integrity would be to pivot. Of course, there's the fear of the wasted effort within Christianity. Matthew 6:19 through 21 gives that idea of not storing up your treasures here on earth, but in heaven. It's recognizing the emotional investment. It's just saying to place it in the next life, which means you won't receive it here. If anything, again, Jesus says you will suffer for it here. So if you haven't been blessed because of Christianity, and this is something we especially see true in the poorer communities, that despite their bad circumstances still hold on to their faith at a higher average because they've already lost so much. Many of these people believe that their failure, their status in this life, economically speaking, financially speaking, in their health or wealth, is an attack of the enemy, is a test from God, is something wrapped up into the supernatural that pays off only if they stay strong in the faith. Their reward only comes if they relent to the suffering now and endure till their death. Tell me again, it doesn't cost anything to believe. It's additionally hard for that person who, despite their financial circumstances, has tithed every single Sunday for the last 30 years, who, despite not having a car, has put in the footwork to make it to church 2 or 3 times a week, every single week, who could be picking up the extra shift on Sunday, but they wouldn't dare miss church. They can't bring themselves to make that all for naught. And no judgment. Again, none of this is to say, I pivoted, I'm smarter, this fallacy didn't work on me, haha. No, I get it, is what I'm trying to say to you. I understand all the emotional and psychological things working to keep you in it. And by design or natural selection, the Bible, the religion, the pastor's message, the focus of the Bible study, it's all doing the same thing, keeping you in the faith, preying off of your fear of loss, hitting you with that stick, and still dangling that carrot, because sometimes that's useful too. But that stick, man, the next one, of course, is the eternal consequence. The fear of hell is the ultimate sunk cost trap. What if I leave? What if I'm wrong? I could burn forever. I could never see my family again. That's exactly why Pascal's wager works so well when it does work. It is an appeal to sunk cost thinking. The idea that you should just keep believing just in case. All of that can be, again, pulled straight from doctrine, but then you have the social and emotional reinforcement. Church involvement means that many people's social lives are 100% dictated around their church, their faith. What will my family think? The hit your reputation will take, losing your friends, losing your status. My entire dynamic with my friends has changed. And of course it has, and I'm not even faulting them. It's a reality of the situation. They don't rely on me anymore. The way that they relied on me was to confide in me, to seek spiritual counsel, to ask me to pray for them. Why would they do any of that now? Of course they wouldn't. And it's nothing even particularly harmful from them, other than the fact we have a different belief now. But it still affects me. I still feel like the black sheep. I still feel unwelcomed in most social circumstances, because most social circumstances still involve Christianity. That's just my particular situation. There's a cost, and it's different for each of us. It's something that only you can answer for, which is why I would never tell anyone without knowing their particular situation that you should definitely come out with your atheism. I think it's healthy in general to be true to yourself, but I recognize some people have more extreme situations than I do. Of course, it affected my relationship with my wife, with my mom, with extended family. Even more powerful than that for keeping people in, although, man, that's extremely powerful, is that identity that Christians have. Many Christians have their entire identity wrapped up in being a child of God, a Christian, someone with a ticket to heaven, living for the next life, not this, having an ultimate purpose, having a template for their existence, having a book that has all the answers. Giving that up, especially if you studied and invested time, money, or energy into creating that identity or understanding, that's a hard one. In those situations, to doubt means to start losing yourself. If I'm not a Christian, then who am I? If I don't believe in God or Christianity or the Bible, what do I believe in? These are insane things to deal with if they were just left alone, but then you have the pressure. You have the apologist and the preachers and your friends all telling you, reinforcing those ideas. You can't be good without God. What would your purpose be? What does any of it mean if you're just going to die and there's nothing? They condescend to you. They criticize you. They scare you. They dehumanize you, quite literally, because they can't conceive of their identity without God. And so you, outside of God, must be nothing. It's a very, very sad state of affairs. And again, I think that all of it ties back so well to this sunk cost fallacy. I started to mention it, but there is then the guilt and shame aspect. In addition to what I already covered, you'll get Satan has deceived you. Your sin is getting in the way. Your ego says you know better than God. You just want to glorify yourself. You're just going through a phase. You're going to break your mother's heart, and on and on and on. The reinforcement by both positive and negative measures is absolutely insane to just keep going, to not rock the boat, to stick with what you know, to reap what you have already sown. You're an addict. And to me, it is almost indistinguishable from the man at the table. One more hand. This next one's going to make everything right. One more Bible study, and then that question will be answered. I'll just go to church a few more times. And the weeks turn into months, and the months turn into years, and pretty soon you're essentially living a lie. Just like eventually the man who can't get up from the blackjack table goes bankrupt. And again, for all of this, we have a good understanding of what is happening emotionally, psychologically in our heads. There's a wonderful series of experiments that were done as part of the Ash conformity experiments. And it showed how people will agree with obviously false statements just to fit in with the group because they're loss averse. It's better to lose your own mind, quite literally. It's better to lose your own sense of right or wrong, your own sense of reality or truth, just not to lose. There was a 2016 Pew Research study that found that one of the major factors among people who stay in religion despite their doubt is simply the fear of losing relationship, not because they actually believe. And so there's this entire psychological cycle of investment that can be understood here as well. You've got to justify your past decisions. Well, I've already read the Bible dozens of times. I wouldn't have put that much energy into it if it wasn't useful. I mean, I probably learned something from it. I mean, it's probably true. I've spent years defending Christianity. I can't admit that I'm wrong now. I see this in the comments all the time. I'm not saying I have a perfect answer for everything, but some Christian will come in with some obviously incorrect statement. Myself or another commenter will just clearly show. I'm not talking about the ones that are up for debate or he said, she said, what about this context? Like, just clearly show that something is factually wrong about what they believe, or what is in the Bible, what the Bible states. Can put it there right in print. They can go look it up for themselves right in the Bible or right on that website or whatever it is. And then they just come back with, nah, you're wrong. You have no faith. You're trying to deceive me. Why should I listen to an atheist? On and on and on and on. It is so hard. And by the way, of course this works for all sides in all debates about anything. Oh my gosh. It is so hard to take a stance, be proved wrong, and change that stance in anything. But how much more in the thing you're claiming is perfect divine knowledge? I had a much easier time accepting that things I thought about the Bible were actually untrue, that I was wrong, that there was a different way to interpret it, that the context meant differently, that maybe it was an allegory, all of these things. It was hard, but I was able to accept that much quicker than I was able to accept, but I know I have this personal relationship with Jesus. And so while all of that was falling down so clearly, for the longest time, it did zero to dent my belief because I had a personal relationship. And again, now I understand the psychology involved in that as well. And different people have different attachments to different reasons that they believe in some kind of a hierarchy unique from one another. But whatever those are, whatever that importance level is for you, you continue to want to justify its validity. You continue to fight for the thing that you see slipping away. You continue to call true what you so obviously are starting to doubt. Then worse, at the same time, many of us, just because of age, have escalating commitments within the church, within ministry, within now leading that Bible study instead of just being a participant, now going on the missions trip instead of just funding it. You get yourself in deeper. It is more investment, thus more to lose if you're wrong. let alone the people that, of course, actually make their living or provide for their family by means of this belief. The verbalization and the normalization of these things is so paramount when one is otherwise separated from those things, has all of those other emotional and spiritual influences reinforcing things for them. Sometimes you just need someone to be like, me too, that sucks, I know. It's a big part of what I hope this channel does in general. So, more time spent there than I was planning. Let's move on to the third and final part here. Why it's not too late. The cost of staying versus the cost of leaving. Because this is the thing that does not get brought up enough. There's a cost to both. Just like in Pascal's wager, the premise is incorrect, that it cost you nothing to believe. It cost a great deal. There's the emotional cost. It is exhausting to pretend or to act like or to fake it till you make it, whatever you want to call it, when you don't. The stress, the internal stress of continually trying to rationalize things that otherwise can't be rationalized. Again, I'm not trying to spark debate with people that currently believe, but for you who are doubting and deconstructing, and you see clearly the contradictions, you see the byproducts of harm within the religion, you see the hypocrisy, you see the true character of Yahweh or Jesus, even as described in the scriptures. You understand the actual history. You understand how it doesn't comport with reality, and on and on and on. Trying to make those things work, trying to get an answer for each one, hearing the apologetics for each and seeing that they fall short, but trying to make them stick anyways. It is an act of insanity, one that I did for so long. It is not the promised peace that this religion proposes. The guilt of not feeling close enough to God anymore. There's also a relational cost for staying when you otherwise shouldn't or don't believe. Many of you ask about my marriage all the time, and it's something I don't talk about a lot out of respect for my wife, but I will say this, that in-between time of my doubting, especially when I wasn't keeping her in the loop, the intimacy lost, and she's not understanding why I'm not praying as much, or can clearly see my discomfort during church, etc. That was much more stress on the relationship, even if it was just my perceived stress of the relationship, than when I was able to be honest and say, sorry, this isn't about you. This isn't against you. I'm simply not convinced anymore. Here's my issues. We can disagree, but I need to be honest. And luckily I did that before any kind of resentment set in, but it's very possible, and I've heard it be explained by others who did stay in some dance of the in-between for too long, that the resentment builds up on both sides. I don't want that, not just with my wife, but with anyone. If I truly care about them, and they truly care about me, we should both be able to be exactly who we are. And healthy boundaries in place around that are there to protect the relationship, not to cut yourself off from it or cut them off from you. It's hard to put healthy boundaries in place when you're pretending to be someone you're not, pretending to believe things that you don't. And again, for some people, I absolutely get, based off your particular circumstances, especially if you're younger or just dependent on the believer in your life for basic survival, it may not be the right thing at the right time to come out. And that's a very hard spot to be in, and I do not envy you. But other than that, my general advice is to be authentic. One that I think doesn't get talked about enough is the opportunity cost of staying in something you don't believe. What could you be learning, experiencing, building or creating instead? I know not everyone is going to become some YouTuber, but I couldn't have this channel if I was still pretending to believe when I didn't. I needed to be honest with those in my life first so I could move on to do this. And you can have your opinions on this all you want, but I take a great deal of satisfaction knowing I'm making a difference, that I am helping people. Again, that I am vocalizing and normalizing what so many of us are going through. This is how it manifests itself for me. It might be completely different for you, and it might have absolutely nothing to do with religion or leaving religion or deconstruction or anything like that. But whatever it is for you, there's an opportunity cost involved with continuing to put time, money, energy, effort, and identity into something you don't believe in. I promise you that. We get one life. And happiness is not about just hedonistic pleasures. It's about authenticity. It's about the ability to be useful, to use the skills you have, to be who you truly are. You can't do any of that when you're pretending. And I don't mean pretending, by the way, with the negative connotation of this deceit. I mean lying to yourself even. not allowing yourself. I mean, there are true mental barriers that we put up based off this sunk cost fallacy to not endure loss. We shut down ideas when they start to get too real. We reinforce other things that will help us continue to hang on longer. Stop placing bad bets that you can't afford to lose. Embrace uncertainty. It is okay to not know. It's okay to require time. You don't owe answers to anybody. You can make up your mind about subjective versus objective morality, or if we have a stated purpose or mission or meaning in our life. All the heady philosophical things that Christians only care about when it's time to convince you to remain in the faith can be dealt with later if you want. The most honest thing you can do is say, I don't know, or I don't believe, or I have a problem with, and you can still be wrong. If you end up wrong, you can still go back. I think the biggest part of this message is at least just to face it. Don't run from it. Don't bury your head in the sand. Don't plug your fingers in your ears. Find your peace in curiosity, not in dogma. You don't have to pretend to have answers you don't. You don't have to claim certainty when what you feel is doubt. Reclaim your time and your energy, your finances and your purpose. Build meaning on your own terms, not selfishly, authentically. I can't promise you it's all going to turn out perfect or that you won't lose something. Only you can decide if it's going to be worth it and to what degree. But I can tell you personally, as someone who is in a very tough spot, especially because I have this channel in addition to all the normal things, who has less than 1 or 2 people in their life who is not an absolute devout Christian, and whose entire community, including the community for their children, is a Christian community in a very Christian city and state, it still was worth it to me. I still lie my head down at night at peace. I'm not afraid, not of hell, not of judgment from people or God. I don't feel the need to know all the answers, though I enjoy learning and I am naturally curious. I am still able to have meaning and morals in my life. There are things that I am passionate about and things that excite me. Just because we will die in the end doesn't mean I don't matter. I know I matter. I may matter differently to different people in different ways now, but I still matter. I matter as a partner. I matter as a parent. I matter as a son, as a brother, as a friend, and as a human. I can still be charitable. I can still be useful. I can still be helpful. I can still be fun. I didn't lose my personality. I'm not some angry atheist scowling in the corner. You see a very small portion of my life, and I know many Christians point at it and say, look at all the time you dedicate. Look at how hurt you are, yada, yada, yada. I do this because I want. I do it because it's fun, and I do it because it helps. And when I don't want to do it, I won't. And I may have a different hierarchy of needs than you do, but my number 1 was authenticity, and I have that. I am following truth wherever it leads. I wish I could leave you with an instruction manual, but all I can tell you is what I tell people in the comments very often. Slow it down. It's okay. You don't have to know everything right now. Just keep learning. Whatever you're in fear of, whatever you're in doubt of, whatever you're still questioning, whatever's still holding on to you from either side or any side, look it up objectively. Hear all sides from it. And here in just a second, a video will appear on the screen called The In-Between. Click that if you want more of whatever I can offer you in terms of what to do during this hardest part, that doubting phase, that deconstructing phase, with all the things still clinging and holding on to you so tightly. That's it for today. Thank you for being here. I'll see you Tuesday with another video, and until then, keep thinking. I wanted to personally thank my top tiers of support: my Iconoclast, Alexander, Ann, Boris, GVI, Jimmy, Joe, Kitboga, Matthew, Perry, and Shawn; my Humanist heroes, Criagh, James, Jarrod, Kristi, and Matthew; my Atheist advocates, Caleb, David, Drew, Jeff, Jeffrey, Julie, Malcolm, Paul, Sparky, and Thomas; as well as all of my secular scholar patrons. If you believe in the mission of this channel, or you just enjoy its content, please consider joining these fine people.